later today, the Prime Minister is going to unveil his legislative agenda, with 38 bills being announced in the Queen's speech, and included in the legislation that the government says will give police the powers they need to deal with a small minority of disruptive protesters, including Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil. So, as Eamon mentioned, we can speak now to Kit Malthouse, who is the Crime and Policing Minister. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
How exactly are you going to be able to bring in these changes, and what will this measure involve?
So we're bringing a public order bill in off the back of the Police, Crime Courts and Sentencing Bill, which we put in place in the last session, to deal with some of the tactics that we've seen being used over the last couple of years, but most particularly lock-ons. This idea of activists gluing themselves to the road or indeed to equipment like fuel gantries, which is often very dangerous and very difficult for the police to deal with. For the first time, that will become a specific offence that will attract a prison sentence and a limited fine. Similarly, we have seen key national infrastructure, fuel depots, motorways, those kind of things being attacked, as well as printing presses. And we want to make that a specific offence, again, with a prison sentence and a fine. Also obstructing transport works. But particularly, we have seen a number of persistent offenders, if you like, who go out and do it again and again and again, notwithstanding what the courts do, basically cocking a snook at the rest of us. And so we're going to bring in a thing called a serious disruption prevention order, which we can put on them individually to restrict their activities. Look, we believe that the right to protest is fundamental to our democracy. It's absolutely right that you should be able to go out in the street, make as much noise and shout and scream about the issue. But you must do it in a way that balances everybody else's right to go about their business and certainly doesn't put yourself or police officers in danger, as we have seen at fuel depots over the last few weeks. So that will be the bill that will be introduced shortly and hopefully be announced. It will be announced in the Queen's speech later.
Look, you call it cocking a snoop at the rest of us. Look, plenty of our audience will agree with that, hugely inconveniencing people up and down the country, as you described. But there are legitimate concerns that this kind of legislation will be a slippery slope, that the fundamental freedoms that are the backbone of Britain will be in some way undermined. Nobody wants to see us in a situation like we're seeing, for example, in Russia, where people who protest against the government of the day or whatever it might be end up in jail.
No, look, we agree that protest is absolutely fundamental, and we will fight tooth and nail to protect it. But protest is not an unqualified right. It has to be balanced against the rights of others to go about their business, or indeed not to be put in danger. So if you are a protester running out into the middle of a motorway, a busy motorway in rush hour, you're putting yourself and indeed others in danger. Now, we think that is crossing a line from a protest point of view. That is not carrying placards down Whitehall, trying to persuade the government to change its ways. That is a legitimate protest. The other is putting people in danger, and the police need powers to be able to deal with those specific offences. Similarly, we've just seen in the fuel depots people gluing themselves to fuel gantries, filled with flammable petrol, which is an incredibly dangerous thing to do, not just for them, but also for the police officers who have to go and remove them. And so dealing with the offence, making sure the police have got the powers to deter it so that protest becomes, much more what we had expected in the past from protest and able to make its point absolutely is a key part of the legislation.
No, I get your point, and sorry to rush you. We only have limited time, and I just want to talk about levelling up. Front of the Express today, the Prime Minister says he will strive night and day to level up Britain, also mentioned in the Queen's speech today. Surely it'd be simpler just to bring out an emergency budget to undo some of the damage done by the previous one.
Well, look, what the Prime Minister has said over the last couple of days is notwithstanding the very difficult cost of living crisis which we're seeing, driven by these global fuel and commodity effects that are bringing a real challenge into people's homes up and down the land. We can't spend our way out of this problem. We've put £22 billion into support for people across the country, particularly those who are most challenged. But we do need to grow our way out of this. And so levelling up, growing all parts of the economy, building a high-skill, high-wage economy, getting people into those jobs has to be our future in the medium and long term. And I think that's what you'll see in the Queen's speech today. The Chancellor and the Prime Minister are monitoring the cost of living situation on a daily basis, and I know they're thinking about how they can be agile in response to that. But as we move towards a budget in the autumn, I think you'll see in the speech today some really assertive new measures to dynamise our economy, drive it forward, so that in the medium term we can pay our bills both at home and as a nation.
OK, look, a final word I have to ask you about Sir Keir Starmer before I let you go. He's in deep water, isn't he?
Well, look, I'm not commenting on that situation. I'm policing minister. I wouldn't. Very unwise for me to comment on an ongoing police investigation. It's up to Keir Starmer.
You don't think he's hypocritical, given that he's been found to have lied? You don't think he's been hypocritical?
Well, that's a matter for the British people to decide. I've never been particularly censorious about the conduct of other MPs. I find it unhelpful to give people advice about how they should behave. He obviously doesn't agree with me. He's given lots of advice about how other people should behave. It's up to him to decide. And I'm sure the electorate will form a view as well. OK,
well, if he is fined, then let's go down the road of assuming this is all concluded. If he is fined, should he resign? He said he will. Is he right to do that?
Well, that's a matter for him. Look, my view is that this was a very difficult situation with complicated rules that were often changing quite quickly. If mistakes were made and they're acknowledged and fixed penalty notices are paid, I don't see why anybody, be they so high or so humble, should lose their job. OK, Kit Malthouse, Crime and Policing Minister, thank you very much for your time this morning.